The Galactic Council Chamber was a place of quiet power, a space where the fate of entire civilizations was decided. A long table, made of a polished black stone from the planet Nithrax, stretched across the room, occupied by representatives of dozens of species. Each species had its own delegate, but the tension in the room was palpable as they convened to discuss a subject that had been deemed insignificant: humankind. At the head of the table, the High Delegate, Zoreth from the Niklar, a species known for their calculated pragmatism, began the session. His voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the chamber. "Today, we address the persistent anomaly. Earth," Zoreth began. His pale blue skin shimmered in the soft light of the chamber's glow. "The humans have made some advancements in space travel. A handful of ships, scattered across a few nearby star systems. But we must remember, they are children, still wrestling with the most basic principles of galactic survival." The representative from the Takru, a bird-like species with sharp talons and feathers that gleamed like polished metal, scoffed from the far end of the table. "The humans are nothing but pests. They've managed to launch a few ships, yes, but their technology is nowhere near that of the more established races. To think that they could pose any threat is laughable." A low murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Zeks, an aquatic species from the deep oceans of the planet Fender, clicked their claws in a rhythmic display of contempt. "Indeed," the Zeks representative added, his voice bubbling as if underwater. "They are primitive. Their ships are inefficient, their weapons barely functional. We should focus our efforts on real matters, not waste time on Earth's quaint struggles." A third delegate, a heavily armored creature from the planet Xerur, who communicated through low-frequency vibrations, sent out a wave of resonance that vibrated through the table. "I agree," it rumbled. "We've watched their progress from a distance. Their fleets are small, underdeveloped. They've yet to even master faster-than-light travel without sending out dangerous radiation bursts. Their reach is limited, their impact negligible." "Then it's settled," Zoreth said, his tone cold and final. "We will continue to monitor them, but we will not waste further resources on humans. They will never be capable of posing a threat to us or to the galaxy at large." The room was silent, save for the hum of ambient energy circulating the chamber. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be dismissed. To the aliens, their existence was no more than a brief curiosity, soon to be forgotten as more significant matters took precedence. As the meeting began to dissolve, an unexpected voice broke through the hum of alien chatter. "I disagree." The words were soft, but they cut through the room like a sharp blade. The speaker was a young human ambassador, standing at the back of the chamber. Her name was Elena Grayson, and though her appearance was simple, no elaborate robes or alien garb, her presence was undeniable. Zoreth raised an eyebrow. "Ambassador Grayson," he said with a trace of disdain, "you are out of line. You are but one voice in a sea of wisdom. Why speak now?" Grayson stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You dismiss us, thinking us weak, primitive, incapable of evolving beyond our petty conflicts. But you've underestimated humanity's greatest strength, our ability to adapt, to survive. And when it's needed most, we will fight, not just for our survival, but for the survival of everything we cherish." The council members exchanged skeptical glances, but Grayson didn't back down. She knew what they didn't. Humanity was more than they appeared, and soon they would realize just how wrong they were. "Mark my words," she said quietly, her voice calm but resolute. "You will regret dismissing us." With that, the meeting ended. But as the council members began to file out, Zoreth's eyes lingered on Grayson for a moment longer than necessary. There was something in her words, a quiet certainty, that he couldn't ignore. But no matter how much he pondered it, he could not bring himself to believe that humanity was anything but a brief flicker in the vastness of the galaxy. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the humans had a secret, and that secret would change everything. The horizon drifted silently through the void, its sleek, white hull reflecting the distant stars as it ventured deeper into uncharted space. The crew, a mixture of experienced astronauts and eager young explorers, moved about the ship, oblivious to the monumental event about to unfold. Captain Elena Grayson stood on the bridge, gazing at the vast expanse of space, her thoughts lingering on the recent meeting of the Galactic Council. She couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's place in the galaxy was more precarious than she had ever imagined. "Captain, we've detected something," said Lieutenant Jarrow, a young officer at the sensor console, his voice tight with urgency. His fingers moved quickly across the controls. "It's faint, but definitely there." Grayson turned, her brow furrowing. "A ship?" she asked, her voice low but commanding. "Possibly," Jarrow replied. "It's not giving off any major heat signatures, and it's not transmitting on standard frequencies. But there's something strange about it, Captain. It's like it's trying to hide from us." Grayson's heart skipped a beat. The thought of an unknown alien vessel so close to their path made her skin crawl. She stepped toward the sensor station. "Can you pinpoint its location?" Jarrow nodded. "It's just a few light years ahead. It's moving slowly, like it's waiting for something." "Slowly?" Grayson echoed, a sudden sense of foreboding creeping into her chest. A ship that wasn't actively moving at full speed, near a human exploratory vessel. Something wasn't right. "Increase our speed, but keep us out of their sensors' range. I want a closer look." As the Horizon powered up its engines, Grayson felt a twinge of unease. She'd heard rumors, whispers, really, about the growing tensions in the galaxy, but she hadn't expected it to hit so close to home. Earth's exploration was a peaceful endeavor, but if there was a threat in the dark of space, they needed to know about it. Minutes later, the Horizon neared the unidentified vessel, now barely visible on their sensors. Grayson leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as the ship began to come into view. It was massive, far larger than anything they had encountered before. Its sleek, metallic surface was dark and menacing, reflecting no light from nearby stars, almost blending in entirely with the blackness of space. "Contact," said Lieutenant Jarrow, his voice steady despite the mounting tension. "They're aware of us now. They've locked onto our position." Grayson felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine. "Shut off all non-essential systems. Prepare to break off at full speed if they show any hostile intent." The bridge fell into a heavy silence as the crew held their breath, waiting to see if the unknown ship would make the first move. Moments stretched into what felt like eternity. Just as Grayson thought the ship might let them pass without incident, a message flashed on their communication screen, transmitted in an unknown language. Jarrow worked quickly, but his expression faltered as he translated the symbols. "It's a warning, Captain," he said, his voice tense. "A message for the Horizon." The screen flickered, and the words appeared in a language the crew could read. "Leave now. The fleet is coming. Earth will fall." A collective gasp filled the bridge. Grayson felt a chill creep up her spine. She knew what this meant. Earth was not just being watched, it was being targeted. "Who sent this?" Grayson asked, her voice tight, though she kept her calm. The alien ship's communications officer, if it even had one, remained silent. Then, the screen blinked again, this time showing a faint, static-laced image of a planet. Earth, unmistakably, and a warning. "It is too late for you. Your world will burn." The transmission ended abruptly, and the screen went black. The entire crew stood motionless for a heartbeat, the weight of the message sinking in. The threat was real. The alien fleet wasn't just coming. It was already on its way. Grayson took a deep breath, her mind racing. The humans had been dismissed by the galaxy's elite, but now they were being thrust into a war they hadn't even known existed. And yet there was no time to waste on panic. Her people would fight back, or they would perish. "Get us out of here, Lieutenant," Grayson commanded. "Full speed ahead. Earth needs to know what's coming." As the horizon turned and sped back toward the edge of human space, the crew knew they had been given a brief glimpse into something far larger and far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. Earth was about to face an invasion, and with the alien fleet already on its way, humanity's fate rested in their hands. Back on Earth, the situation was growing more dire by the minute. Word of the alien threat had spread quickly through the highest levels of Earth's governments. The Horizon's transmission had been decrypted, and humanity's leaders knew that there was no time to waste. The alien fleet, though still a few weeks away from Earth, was vast and powerful. Even if humanity had the will to fight, they were sorely underprepared. Their ships were primitive compared to the alien armada. There had to be something, some secret weapon, that could change the tide of this coming war. In a remote underground facility, hidden deep within the Arctic Circle, the Nightshade project had been in development for years, away from prying eyes. Few knew its true purpose, but now, the leaders of Earth's space coalition had no choice but to reveal what had been kept in the shadows for so long. Dr. Alana Reed, the head engineer of the project, stood before a massive, towering holographic display showing a 3D image of the Nightshade ship. Its sleek, angular shape looked like something out of a science fiction novel, but it was very real. The Nightshade was unlike anything else humanity had ever built, a vessel capable of not only remaining invisible to the naked eye, but also undetectable to any known alien sensor technology. The ship's design was a masterpiece of human ingenuity. Its outer hull was coated in a material that could absorb and scatter electromagnetic radiation, rendering it effectively invisible to radar and infrared detection. Inside, its systems were integrated into a network that allowed it to blend seamlessly with the surrounding environment, using complex algorithms to mimic stellar background radiation. To any external observer, it would seem as though the ship didn't exist at all. Captain Alina Grayson, fresh off her return from the Horizon, now stood in the same control room, eyes fixed on the model of the ship. Her heart raced. This was their last hope. With no time to waste, Earth's leaders had decided that the Nightshade would be their weapon of choice to stand against the alien invasion. Dr. Reed, standing beside Grayson, addressed the room. "We've spent years perfecting the Nightshade's stealth capabilities. This is the culmination of all of humanity's best minds working together. We designed this ship not just to hide from enemy sensors, but to infiltrate their fleets undetected. We've also equipped it with weapons that can disrupt alien ship systems from the inside." Grayson nodded, her focus entirely on the holographic model. The stakes had never been higher. The alien fleet was growing closer with every passing day. Soon, they would be within range, and if the humans couldn't stop them, Earth's fate would be sealed. "We've also worked on a plan," Dr. Reed continued, flipping the hologram to a map of the alien fleet's expected trajectory. "The Nightshade will infiltrate the alien armada just before they reach Earth. Once inside their ranks, we'll plant a series of high-tech disruptors on their command ships. These disruptors will cripple their communications and power systems, throwing their fleet into chaos." Grayson studied the map carefully. "And if we get caught, what happens then?" The room fell silent. There was no easy answer. The Nightshade was designed for a single, dangerous mission. There would be no second chances. If the ship was detected, the crew would have to fight their way out. And that was a fight they would almost certainly lose. "We don't get caught," Grayson said, her voice resolute. "This ship is our last chance to stop them. It has to work." The room was heavy with the weight of their decision. Earth had one shot, and it rested in the hands of Captain Grayson and her crew. She was about to lead them on a mission that could change the course of history. If they succeeded, they might just have a chance to defend their world. If they failed, humanity would become another footnote in the galaxy's history, wiped out by the very aliens that had dismissed them. "How long until the Nightshade is ready for deployment?" Grayson asked, turning her attention back to Dr. Reed. "We've been preparing for this moment for years," Dr. Reed replied, her tone sharp. "The ship is ready. All we need now is to assemble the crew." As Grayson stood there, staring at the blueprint of the Nightshade, her resolve hardened. There was no more time for hesitation. The fight was coming, and humanity's fate would soon be determined. The Nightshade would be their first and only strike. The Nightshade sat in its hangar, bathed in the soft glow of the facility's overhead lights. It was a thing of beauty, sleek and imposing, a true marvel of human engineering. Its dark hull seemed to absorb the surrounding light, almost as if it were part of the shadows themselves. Inside, a team of engineers and technicians made final adjustments, ensuring that every system was functioning perfectly. The ship was ready, and the crew was prepared to take it into the unknown. Captain Elena Grayson stood before the ship, her gaze fixed on the massive vessel. Her heart raced with anticipation. But beneath that, there was a steady current of fear. This mission was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. The Nightshade was their only chance, and failure meant the end of Earth's existence. Captain Grayson, a voice called out from behind her. She turned to see her second-in-command, Commander Kellen Drake, approaching. His usual confident demeanor was tempered with a hint of nervousness. "Ready for this?" he asked, his voice low. "As ready as we'll ever be," Grayson replied. She couldn't afford to show any doubt. Not now. She had to lead her team with unwavering confidence. "We've gone over the plan 1,000 times," Drake said. "We'll infiltrate the alien fleet, plant the disruptors, and get out before they even know we're there. But it's a one-shot deal, Captain. There's no going back once we're in." Grayson nodded. "I know. We do this right, and we stop their invasion before it even starts. We fail, and Earth is done. The galaxy won't remember us." Drake's gaze softened. "I think they'll remember us either way. But let's make sure it's for the right reason." The two stood there for a moment, staring at the Nightshade. Grayson could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on her shoulders, but she knew that this was the only chance humanity had. If they succeeded, they would change everything. But if they failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Let's get this done," Grayson said, turning toward the entrance of the hangar. "Time's running out." The flight deck was bustling with activity as the crew of the Nightshade prepared for takeoff. Grayson moved through the crew with purpose, checking in on her officers and ensuring that every task was being handled with precision. Lieutenant Jarrow, the officer who had first detected the alien ship, was at his station, monitoring the ship's sensors with a sharp focus. "All systems are go, Captain," Jarrow said as she approached. "Good," Grayson replied. "We're about to head straight into the lion's den. No room for error." With a soft hum, the Nightshade powered up its engines. The room grew quieter as everyone took their seats and strapped in. Grayson took her place in the cockpit, adjusting the controls and preparing for the journey ahead. As the Nightshade slowly ascended from a hangar, the tension on board was palpable. The ship's stealth technology had been tested in simulations, but now, for the first time, it was going to face a real-world threat. The crew had no illusions. They were about to fly straight into the heart of the alien fleet, a massive armada that was already making its way toward Earth. And the only thing standing between their world and destruction was this ship, this crew, and their determination. Once they cleared Earth's atmosphere, the Nightshade would engage its cloaking systems. The ship would become invisible to alien sensors, allowing them to infiltrate the fleet unnoticed. They would have to remain undetected long enough to plant their disruptors on the alien command ships. But the risks were immense. One misstep, one slip-up, and the entire mission would be compromised. Initiating stealth mode, Jarrow's voice broke through Grayson's thoughts. Engaging cloaking systems now. The ship's engines hummed softly as the systems powered down. The stars outside the viewport flickered briefly, and then everything went silent. The Nightshade was invisible. Grayson exhaled slowly, her heart racing as they began their journey into enemy territory. Every minute brought them closer to the alien fleet, but there was no turning back now. Hours later, as the ship approached the coordinates of the alien armada, Grayson stared out the cockpit window. The stars had shifted, and the black void of space was now filled with the silhouettes of hundreds of alien ships, their lights faint but growing steadily as they neared Earth. The scale of the fleet was overwhelming. If they were detected here, there was no chance of escaping. They would be swarmed. "We're close," Drake's voice came over the comms. "How long until we reach the alien flagship?" "Not long now," Grayson said, her mind focused on the task ahead. She glanced at Jaro, who was monitoring the sensors. "Keep us out of their range as long as you can. We're on the edge of their detection zone," Jaro responded. "They haven't noticed us yet, but we'll need to move fast once we're inside." Grayson nodded. "Once we're in, we do our job, and we get out. Stay sharp, everyone." As they drifted closer to the heart of the alien fleet, Grayson couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would define everything. They were humanity's last chance, and there was no room for failure. The blackness of space was broken only by the faint flickers of distant stars, and the massive silhouette of the alien fleet loomed ahead, a sea of strange, menacing shapes. The nightshade moved like a shadow through the darkness, its cloaking systems keeping it undetectable. Every member of the crew sat in tense silence, knowing that one slip-up, one sign of weakness, would mean the end of everything they were trying to accomplish. Captain Alina Grayson stood at the front of the bridge, eyes fixed on the faint glow of the enemy fleet on the monitors. It was surreal. She had imagined this moment, but now that it was here, the reality felt different. The stakes were higher than anything humanity had ever faced. The fleet ahead of them was massive, and inside it were the ships that could destroy Earth. If they were caught now, they would never even make it to the flagship. "Stealth systems holding steady," Lieutenant Jaro reported from his station, his fingers dancing across the console. "We've been on the fringes of their sensor range for almost an hour. So far, no sign that they've detected us." "Good," Grayson said, her voice steady but taut. "Keep us invisible as long as you can. Once we're inside their fleet, we need to make our move quickly." There's no room for hesitation. Commander Kellen Drake, seated beside Grayson, spoke up. "We're getting close to their command ship. Once we plant the disruptors on it, their entire fleet will lose its coordination. We'll have a window to escape before they can react." Grayson nodded. "That's assuming they don't notice us first, and I'm not counting on luck." The crew continued to work in silence, each person doing their part in perfect synchronization. Every decision mattered now. The Nightshade was humanity's last hope, and there would be no second chances. The journey through the fleet was nerve-wracking. The alien ships, massive and imposing, hovered in formation, their lights dim but constant. From the distance, they appeared almost peaceful, as if they were merely waiting. But Grayson knew that behind those cold, silent hulls, there were weapons capable of erasing Earth from existence. The Nightshade slid deeper into the heart of the alien armada, just outside the perimeter of the command ship's massive rotating form. It was a strange, angular structure, its surface covered in shifting, organic patterns. Grayson couldn't help but wonder what kind of technology it used, but now wasn't the time to dwell on that. Their mission was clear: get in, plant the disruptors, and get out before they were detected. "We're in position," Jaro announced. His voice was calm, but Grayson could hear the tension there. It was impossible to stay relaxed in a situation like this. Grayson turned to Drake. "Time to make our move." Drake gave a tight nod, and without further words, the crew sprang into action. The Nightshade moved closer, its systems working in perfect harmony. The ship's stealth technology kept them hidden, but there was still the risk that anything, could go wrong. They needed to get past the alien ship's defenses, plant the disruptors, and be gone before they were noticed. Approaching target, Jaro called out, "We're going to need to stay just outside their sensor sweep to avoid detection. Once the disruptors are planted, we'll have about 10 minutes before their systems stabilize." Grayson's heart raced as she glanced at the view screen. The command ship was now just below them, a massive black void in the heart of the fleet. If they could land on its hull undetected, The mission could succeed. But the stakes were high. One wrong move, and it was all over. "Everyone stay sharp," Grayson said, her voice firm. "Jaro, monitor the ship's systems. Drake, you're with me on the surface. We'll plant the disruptors together." The crew nodded, and with practiced precision, Grayson and Drake made their way to the docking bay. The ship's silent engines hummed as it slowly approached the alien command ship, its hull almost brushing against the alien vessel's surface. Grayson felt a cold sweat on her brow, but she didn't let it show. There was no room for fear now. They had a job to do. With a soft hiss, the Nightshade's external airlock sealed against the alien ship, and Grayson and Drake suited up in their environmental suits, ready to step out onto the unfamiliar surface. The world outside was silent, save for the low hum of the Nightshade systems and the distant sound of the alien fleet moving in perfect harmony. "Let's move," Grayson said. She and Drake carefully exited the ship, stepping onto the cold, metallic surface of the alien vessel. The gravity here was slightly different, but they adjusted quickly. Their mission was clear. They had no time to waste. The disruptors were small but powerful, designed to infiltrate the alien command ship systems and cause massive disruptions. The sooner they planted them, the sooner they could escape. But the closer they got to the heart of the ship, the more oppressive the silence became. Grayson's mind raced as she moved with purpose, her every step echoing in the vast emptiness of the alien vessel. Grayson and Drake moved swiftly across the cold, metallic surface of the alien command ship. The faint hum of its machinery vibrated beneath their boots as they navigated through the labyrinth of unfamiliar architecture. The ship's design was nothing like the sleek, orderly human vessels. Its surface was a twisted combination of organic and mechanical components, pulsating in eerie synchrony, as if the ship itself was alive. Grayson kept her gaze fixed ahead, ignoring the discomfort crawling up her spine. There was no time for hesitation. They had one mission, and the entire fate of Earth rested on them completing it. "How much farther?" Grayson asked, her voice low but firm as she spoke into her communicator. Drake, keeping a steady pace beside her, checked his map. "We're about 200 meters from the core. The disruptors should be planted within the power conduits. That's the only place where we can ensure maximum damage." Grayson nodded, adjusting her weapon strap as she moved with precision. The Nightshade was still cloaked above them, silently waiting, but it wouldn't stay that way forever. Once they planted the disruptors, they'd have only a narrow window to escape before the alien fleet realized something was wrong. "Stay sharp," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't afford any surprises." As they moved deeper into the bowels of the ship, the architecture became even more alien. The walls, which had once seemed cold and mechanical, now seemed to pulse and shift as if they were made of living matter. There were no doors or visible windows, just vast stretches of organic corridors leading them deeper into the ship's heart. Grayson had no idea how it worked, or even if it was entirely a ship at all. It was as if the very structure of the vessel was a hybrid of biology and technology, an unsettling blend of both. "Over there," Drake murmured, pointing to a glowing panel embedded in the wall. The conduits were close, but so were the alien systems that monitored them. They had reached their destination, a series of conduits running through a central core. These conduits were the lifeblood of the command ship, the source of its power. The disruptors, once activated, would send a shockwave through the entire alien fleet's communication and energy systems, throwing their entire operation into chaos. Grayson crouched, placing the first disruptor against the conduit with care. The device hummed softly as it attached itself to the surface, its small, intricate mechanisms clicking into place. "One down," Grayson whispered, turning to Drake. "We need to hurry." Drake nodded, positioning the second disruptor on another nearby conduit. His movements were swift but precise. The clock was ticking. Suddenly, there was a faint, eerie noise from deep within the ship, a low rumble that vibrated through the walls. Grayson froze. The sound was unlike anything she had ever heard, an alien hum, that seemed to echo through the ship's very bones. It was a warning, or worse, an indication that their presence had been detected. "Did you hear that?" Drake asked, his voice tight. Grayson didn't respond. She was already moving. The second disruptor was in place. They needed to finish this. Now, the alien fleet was only a few hours from Earth, and they had to leave before the ship's systems activated fully. Every second they wasted here was one less chance to escape. "Let's go," she said sharply, her eyes scanning the corridors. The calm, pulsating hum of the ship was now replaced by a subtle, unnerving shift in atmosphere. The walls seemed to ripple more violently, and Grayson felt a growing sense of urgency. As they retraced their steps back toward the airlock, the rumbling grew louder. It wasn't just the ship. It felt like something more. Something was moving. Grayson's instincts screamed that they weren't alone. "Get to the airlock, now," she ordered, her voice cracking slightly with the growing tension. They moved quickly, but the ship's oppressive silence was now filled with a new kind of noise. The low growl of machinery powering up, the hum of distant engines igniting, the sound of something, or someone, approaching. "Captain, we've been detected." Jarrow's voice crackled through their comms, panic lacing his words. "The fleet's sensors are responding to your presence. The stealth field is failing." Grayson's heart sank. "How much time do we have?" 5 minutes, at most. They'll have you pinned down within that time," Jarrow replied. "Understood," Grayson said, her pulse quickening. The mission was no longer about just planting the disruptors. It was about surviving long enough to escape. They had to get back to the Nightshade before the alien ships converged on their location. They broke into a sprint, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Each step felt heavier, the walls closing in as the ship seemed to come alive around them. There was no time for fear now. Grayson's mind was focused entirely on the mission. They rounded a corner. And then, just ahead, Grayson saw the airlock. It was just a few steps away. But the rumble behind them wasn't just a distant vibration anymore. It was the unmistakable sound of something hunting them. The alien ship had detected them, and now they were the prey. "Move," Grayson shouted as the first blips of enemy ships appeared on the distant sensors. There was no escape unless they reached the Nightshade in time. The walls of the alien ship seemed to close in as Grayson and Drake sprinted toward the airlock. Every footstep reverberated with urgency, their breaths coming in short gasps as the hum of the alien engines grew louder around them. There was no room for hesitation now. They had to reach the Nightshade before the alien fleet reacted, or they would be surrounded. And if that happened, there would be no chance of escape. "Jarrow, how's the status on the ship?" Grayson asked urgently into her comms, her voice tight with tension. "We're running out of time, Captain." Jarrow's voice crackled with barely contained panic. "The stealth system is failing fast. The aliens are already scrambling their forces to intercept you. You have less than 3 minutes." "Understood," Grayson replied, pushing her legs harder as she ran, the sound of her boots slapping against the alien ship's surface drowning out all else. Drake kept pace, his face set in grim determination. The airlock was just ahead. Grayson could see the soft glow of the Nightshade's outer hull, now faintly visible as the ship's cloaking field began to flicker and fail. The Nightshade was still out there, waiting. But the ship's invisibility wouldn't last forever. They had to move faster. "We're almost there," Drake said, his voice strained. But then, from behind them, there was a sudden, bone-chilling sound, an unnatural, mechanical hiss, followed by a deep, resonating thrum that reverberated through the entire corridor. The alien ship's defense systems were coming online. "Move, move, move," Grayson shouted, her voice filled with urgency. She and Drake turned a corner, and there it was, the airlock. They were so close. But in the distance, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A series of glowing red lights flared to life, and the distant hum of alien weapons charging up filled the air. They were being hunted. The airlock's control panel blinked erratically as they reached it, and Grayson slammed her hand against the button to open it. The door slid open with a hiss, but the moment they stepped inside, the familiar feel of safety was replaced by a rising dread. "We're not going to make it," Drake shouted, glancing over his shoulder. The enemy ships were closing in fast. "Shut the door," Grayson ordered as she jumped into the pilot's seat. "Jarrow, prepare for immediate launch. We need to get out of here now." Drake moved quickly to the airlock controls, slamming the button to seal the hatch. A low mechanical whine echoed through the ship as the outer doors slid shut. They were inside, but the Nightshade wasn't safe yet. The alien ships were converging on their position, their weapons powering up. They were running out of time. "We've been detected." Jarrow's voice came through again, and there was no mistaking the panic in it. "The fleet's already locking onto us. We have maybe a minute before we're targeted." Grayson's fingers flew across the control panel, bringing the Nightshade to life. The ship's engines hummed softly, but the external sensors began flashing, warning of incoming enemy fire. "Hold on," Grayson shouted as she pushed the ship's throttle forward, and the Nightshade surged into motion, darting away from the alien command ship. Outside the viewports, the alien fleet had already begun to mobilize, their ships rapidly closing in on the Nightshade's position. The lights of the command ship grew more intense, and Grayson knew that their brief moment of stealth had evaporated. They were now targets. The Nightshade was fast, but the alien ships were faster and more numerous. Grayson's heart pounded as the ship's hull vibrated under the first barrage of energy fire. The shields held, but only just. "Shields at 60%. Jarrow shouted, his voice cutting through the comms as the ship rocked from another hit. "We can't take another direct hit like that." "Evasive maneuvers," Grayson barked. She twisted the controls, sending the Nightshade into a sharp turn as another blast of energy whizzed past them. The ship's thrusters roared to life, sending them into a tight spiral to avoid the incoming fire. Drake was already at the weapons console, his hands flying over the controls. "I'm activating the countermeasures," he said. "This is going to get messy." "Do it," Grayson ordered. "We can't outrun them forever. We need to fight back." In the cockpit, the external viewports shimmered briefly, showing the vast alien fleet closing in. Grayson's mind raced. She couldn't risk a full engagement with the alien armada, but they needed a way to buy more time. The Nightshade was equipped with weapons, but they weren't designed to destroy an entire fleet. They were designed for one thing: to give the crew a fighting chance long enough to complete their mission. But now that their cover had been blown, they had no choice but to defend themselves. "Ready the plasma cannons," Grayson said, her fingers tightening around the controls. "We're going to make a run for it. Jarrow, we need a clear path out of here. Now." Jarrow's response was almost immediate. "There's a gap forming in the fleet. You have 5 seconds to move through it before they close it off. I'll give you the best shot at escaping." "Take it," Grayson said, her voice as cold as the airlock around her. The Nightshade bucked and weaved as another wave of energy blasts hit, but Grayson's focus was absolute. With the engines roaring and the ship tearing through the void, Grayson slammed the throttle forward once more. They were escaping, but it wasn't over yet. The fleet was closing in, and their pursuit was relentless. The Nightshade shot through the darkness of space, its engines roaring as it broke away from the alien fleet, but the enemy wasn't about to let them slip away that easily. Grayson's hands tightened around the controls as the ship lurched beneath her, another blast of energy shaking the hull. The shields flickered, their strength rapidly diminishing under the assault. The alien ships were relentless, and they were closing in fast. "Shields at 40% and dropping." Jarrow's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and panicked. "They're locking onto us again. We won't last long if we don't get out of their range." Grayson's mind raced, calculating their options. The fleet's weapons were devastating, and they couldn't take another direct hit. But the gap Jarrow had identified was still there, and it was their only chance. If they could get through it, They might just have enough time to jump to warp and escape the alien fleet for good. "Hang on, everyone," Grayson muttered under her breath, her eyes fixed on the distant void ahead. "We can't afford to miss this opening." The ship rocked again as another round of energy blasts slammed into the hull. Sparks flew from the control panel as Grayson jerked the controls to the left, narrowly dodging a deadly energy pulse that exploded just behind them. "One more hit like that, and we're done," Drake shouted from the weapons console. His voice was tight, and Grayson could hear the stress in it. "We need to make it to the gap, Captain." She nodded sharply, her face set in a mask of determination. "I know. We're almost there." With one last hard maneuver, Grayson sent the Nightshade into a sharp turn, pushing the ship's engines to their limit. They were now heading straight for the gap between the pursuing alien ships, a narrow corridor of space where the alien fleet had momentarily spread out. It was their only chance to break free, and it was a razor-thin opening. "Jaro, you'd better be right about this," Grayson muttered under her breath. Her fingers flew across the control panel, flipping switches and activating the ship's evasive thrusters to give them an edge in this desperate dash. The alien ships, sensing their intentions, were starting to close in on the gap, their weapons charging up once again. Grayson's heart hammered in her chest as the Nightshade raced toward the opening. Every second counted. The gap was closing, and the alien ships were pushing forward, their weapons aimed directly at them. "This is it," Grayson shouted, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the cockpit. "Brace for impact if we don't make it." She pushed the controls as far as they would go, the Nightshade groaning under the strain as it accelerated toward the narrow space between the alien ships. The pursuing fleet was just a hair's breadth behind them, their deadly weapons primed and ready. "Shields are down to 20%, Jaro yelled. "If we don't make it through that gap, we're done." The gap was only a few hundred meters away now. Grayson's eyes locked onto it, and for a brief moment, everything else seemed to fade. There was only the path ahead, the enemy behind them, and the life-or-death choice that lay in front of them. Just as the Nightshade was about to enter the gap, a massive explosion erupted from the rear. The alien fleet fired everything they had in a final attempt to stop them. Grayson's hands gripped the controls tighter, knowing this was the moment. With a final push, the Nightshade shot forward into the narrow gap, barely scraping through as energy blasts exploded around them. "Yes," Drake yelled as they emerged on the other side. The alien ships had been left behind, momentarily thrown into disarray. But the escape wasn't over yet. The alien ships were still regrouping, and the fleet was far from finished. However, they had a small window now, and that was all they needed. "Get us to warp speed, now," Grayson commanded, her voice barely containing the relief that surged through her chest. Jaro didn't hesitate. "Engaging warp drive," he said. The ship lurched as the engines fired up, and the stars outside the viewports began to stretch into lines as the Nightshade jumped to light speed. They were finally free of the immediate danger. The relief was almost overwhelming. Grayson slumped back in her seat, breathing heavily. They had done it. Against all odds, they had survived the impossible. They had infiltrated the heart of the alien fleet, planted the disruptors, and escaped with their lives. But as the ship settled into warp speed, Grayson couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The aliens wouldn't stop. The fleet would regroup. But for now, humanity had won a crucial victory, and there was a glimmer of hope, a chance to fight back, to protect their world. "How long until we're out of their range?" Grayson asked, her voice steady again. "Another few minutes," Jaro replied, his voice calm now. "They won't be able to track us once we're out of the system. We've got time." Grayson exhaled, her hands shaking from the adrenaline. She looked at her crew, her team, who had fought beside her through the chaos. They had faced the impossible and lived to tell the tale. "Let's get home," she said softly, her voice full of quiet determination. They still had a world to save.